world parent engagement. Welcome to real world parent engagement examples in early childhood collaboration. Okay, I have to say I'm okay with it being recorded. All right. Just to make sure that everybody can participate, again, I'm going to give the floor over to our gracious interpreters to make an announcement on how you make sure you're in your preferred language room. So, Letty or Lindsay, if you want to go ahead and make the announcement. I'm not hearing anything. Do y'all hear something? Lindsay or Letty or whoever is interpreting Spanish to English, can you make the announcement, or both of you? You're muted if you're talking. Also, we're not hearing you.
If they're already assigned in the room, Janet, then you won't be able to hear them in this room. No.
Oh, I'm still learning this technology. All right, thank you, Linda. All right, so I can make the announcement. Yes. So we will be interpreting English to Spanish and Spanish to English during this training to make sure that everybody can participate accordingly. And so for that, we need everyone to please choose your preferred language at the bottom of your Zoom window. If you can choose interpretation icon, excuse me, and then choose the your language that you prefer. You may also want to then mute original audio so that you can just hear your preferred language and not hear both languages. It might be very noisy. And if you need any help, please put in the chat and we'll make sure to help you. Not me, but somebody else that has more tech savviness. Entonces, para ahorita en este momento, si todavía no lo ha hecho, vamos a escoger nuestro idioma preferido. Oh, thanks. So if you can, so, oh, I get so confused. Okay. Si puede, entonces seleccionar su idioma, este logo de interpretación y luego escoger su idioma preferido. Okay. Everybody ready? ¿Todos listos? Thanks. The learning curve for everyone. I mean, it's definitely for me. All right. So welcome, introductions. If you can please share in the chat your name, your role, and then any collaborations and/or organizations you are a part of, and your preferred language. Just because we will be in breakout groups and want to make sure everybody's in a breakout group of their preferred language. Okay, si podemos todos poner en el chat. Okay, I'm so used to simultaneous translation. So yeah, we could just put your name, any introduction that you want to share with one another. Just let us know who is in the room. And then can I get a just maybe like a reaction or something to see who is a part of a collaboration or a collaborative? Okay. All right. Well, I'm so excited to be here. I will introduce myself now. So, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Janet Vargas. I'm a trainer and a coach with Illinois Action for Children's CS3 team. That stands for Community System Statewide Support. We offer training, technical assistance, and coaching to early childhood collaborations across the state of Illinois. And we also offer the same to regional early childhood system work. And for those of you who are not familiar with collaboration, we are putting a link in the chat that will that connects you to our website, and you can learn a little bit more about what are early childhood collaborations. But overall, they're a coalition or group of early childhood stakeholders who work together at a community level to communicate, assess kind of how they're all working together, set some goals collectively, and then um, some strategy to improve these systems and how they serve children and families. And that's why we're here today. My chat hides. To talk a little bit about how we can engage parents in working at a community systems level and working as collaborations. If you're not part of a collaboration, that's completely fine. We're going to be talking about parent engagement work that I'm sure you can take back um, to whatever capacity you work with parents, and I'm sure you'll find something that's helpful. So today we're going to CS3, our team, we have a parent engagement framework and some resources that we'll be very briefly reviewing with you. We just want to go ahead and share that in case you're interested and you can read up on it on your own. Then we're going to participate in small group discussions because we're all teachers, we're all learners, and we all have something to share. So we're going to be talking in small groups of 3 or 4 about our parent engagement experiences. Then what you probably are here for, we'll spend most of the time, 75 minutes, hearing from a couple of parents who are engaged with their collaborations and with community-based organizations, and a staff member as well who is engaging parents in their collaboration as well. And at any point, if you have any questions or comments, you just please jump in the chat, unmute. Want to make this as organic and informal and just overall community building as possible. So this is what our agenda looks like today. We will have a short mini break of 5 minutes. Don't be mad at me, but it's enough to run to the bathroom. Not enough to make a coffee pot, but enough to run to the bathroom. And then that'll be our time together. So let's jump in. Okay. First of all, I know when I use the term parent a lot, we use the term parent. I just want to clarify that when we say parent, we're using the Head Start definition. That means any and every adult that shows up for their child. So it can be, included but not limited to biological, adoptive, foster parents, grandparents, legal and formal guardians, uncles, aunts, adult siblings. So any adult that shows up for their child. And this is a graphic that we created as part of our framework that we call the Early Childhood Spheres of Parent Engagement. When we started thinking about parent engagement, it was clear that parent engagement happens in different places, but also that when parents get involved, they have the power to enact change in those spaces. So we saw that parents usually first get involved in the South in families here, this purple one, you know, as a potential early learning client, figuring out what is, you know, what programs are available, why is this important for my child, as an adult learner, moving their personal goals forward so they can help their children as first teachers, right? Help them with um, their education. And then from there, parents, if they find a service or a program for their child, they go into the programs and services sphere, becoming participants, sometimes volunteers in the classroom, and even partners, right, joining parent councils and advisory boards in their programs. And then this programs and services, I think, is where we're used to engaging parents as a sector, right? I think there's a lot of resources, you know, a lot of support. Not to say that it's not difficult, because it is, and not to say that it's not. I mean, and by difficult, I mean it's not. It doesn't take work. I think it all takes work. But where we saw as a team that was that in this area, the community systems and policy sphere, where collaborations tend to work, that there wasn't as many resources around parent engagement. And so that's where we set out to build on to curate on what has already been working nationally and at the state level, and then continue to, you know, create learning spaces where we can share what we're doing, how we're doing it, and then how we can just get better at it, right? So this is where we'll be focusing our conversation on community systems and policy work. We do have a handbook that goes into our framework a little bit more and goes into these four potential roles for engagement. And I'll quickly talk about them real quick. So there's these four roles that we found that across the state collaborations were engaging parents in these roles. Sometimes they are overlapping. Parents might be wearing multiple hats, but overall these are like four distinct functions that parents can play in their collaboration. So family and community expert. Anytime a parent is asked about their expertise, about their experiences as a parent, you know, what works for your family, for your community. Anytime they fill out a survey or participate in any way giving feedback on their experience, they are in the role of family and community expert. Outreach ambassador. This usually consists of peer-to-peer outreach, where parents are going out in the community or you know, and to events, door knocking, and talking to other parents. Sometimes it's leaving messages, like leaving a message, leaving information. Sometimes it's asking for feedback. Collaboration parent leader usually means, this role usually consists of parents being members of their collaboration and in the way that everybody else is, and then advocate in the sense of like policy advocate. So parents sharing their expertise with decision makers to impact change. So that's where we're going to be focusing on. And then just wanted to also, like, our framework talks about intentionality. And so when we are thinking about why are we engaging parents in early childhood collaborations, being clear about like for each activity or each engagement effort, what is the purpose or what is the outcomes that we seek for everyone involved. So just want to check in with y'all because I've been talking a whole lot, but in general, why do we engage parents in early childhood collaboration? So you can put it in the chat or unmute and jump in. So why do we engage parents in early childhood collaboration? Oh, I see the chat. I'm coming. As a preventative measure. Thanks, Samantha. Parents should have agency in programming decisions that affect them and their children. Thanks. We want to hear from them and censor the message. Thank you all for your participation. It makes it less awkward for me to just talk. Keeping it real. Okay. So yes, and I see a couple more messages. Feel free to continue like conversations amongst yourselves in the chat, but also to read, everybody's expertise. And yes, they're critical experts and equity. And so yeah, usually when we are in early childhood collaborations and we engage parents, like the big why is that we want to see better outcomes for children and their families. Specifically, the little why, we often engage parents and families to recruit and enroll their families in programs, which is somewhat connected to also support well-being, right? Are your basic needs being met? Do you need to be connected to services that can support that? And then where we also want to make sure that we're engaging parents to inform systems change. What's working, what's not working, and what ideas for solutions do you all have? So I'll give you a second to read our parent engagement definition on your own. Oh, and I want to say that for Spanish speakers, we do have the translation of the PowerPoint in Spanish. We put it in the chat, and if you could just follow along, please. And thank you. So any words or ideas that stand out to you from our definition?
Yes, Janet, this is Becky over at Birth to 5 in Region 17. What really jumps out at me is that intentional effort by the collaboration to provide parents the opportunity. So making sure kind of bringing it out and not necessarily just internally, but it's an intentional effort really speaks to me.
Thank you, Becky. And then I see in the chat, shared responsibility. Yeah. So I think, yeah, that was important to us to define, parent engagement as a process, like something that we do, and as an outcome, like what is the result of what we do. And yes, to all of those ideas that are important, as you can tell. There's a lot of words here, but they're all important. And so I think, yeah, one of the main ideas is that it's, parent engagement is something that we do and that we do intentionally. It's not something that just happens because we want it to be there, right? And we're here to figure out how to best support that. So thank you all very much. I'm almost done talking, I promise. This is the last part of the framework. I just a quick review of a little bit of what the framework entails. We talk about for all collaborations or anybody engaging parents, starting with clarity and commitment. What's your definition of parent engagement? Is it in writing? Does everybody know it? And then that commitment piece is, okay, now that we agree what it is, are we allocating resources to water this work. The grass is greener where you water it. And then, which once you, that clarity and commitment then leads you into intentional engagement, where you create, as someone who is someone or a collaboration or an agency that wants to engage parents, it's helpful to create specific engagement opportunities that parents can, jump in and out of depending on their circumstances. That where we clarify, roles, responsibilities, support, and compensation, and then making sure that once you have these roles identified and these opportunities, that you are intentionally recruiting and engaging the voices of those most impacted. Then leads to partnership, right? Then you engage those most impacted, they're in a role, and then you got to make sure that for them to be able to show up in that partnership, that they can, they're equipped with what they need to know, what they need to do, what the materials that they need to be able to fulfill that role. And that includes, eliminating all the obstacles for participation. And then a biggie is sharing leadership and power with them. It's not a partnership if we're not sharing that power, which then ultimately leads to what we hope would be focused change, right? We're partnering with those most impacted, getting feedback, and just working together to build a community that reflects more accurately the needs of the people. And we start to improve the system around the issues that make the biggest have the biggest impact for families, which then hopefully leads us to a more equitable early childhood. So this is our framework. We offer other trainings around the framework. We have a handbook. We have other resources that we'll share with you all if you're interested in learning a little bit more. But what we're here today for really is, okay, this is theory, this is great, paper, words on paper, but once you start doing it, you realize like, oh, I didn't know that was gonna happen, or like, oh, like my community, maybe that doesn't work for us. And what this is today is, building a space where we can, once we start to engage, let's talk about it. Let's build a space where we can honestly troubleshoot, share best practices, and support each other in this very necessary work. So we're going to start with small group discussions, because I'm sure that you all have so much to share and to teach one another. So we're going to go in these group discussions for 18 minutes. The questions that you'll be discussing that are also in your, there's an activity guide that lists these questions in the activity guide. But they'll be pretty straightforward, right? Like, how does your collaboration or organization engage with parents and families, and why? Like, to what end? What benefits have you seen as a result of parent engagement? And then what have been some challenges, and how have you managed these challenges? We're going to do a quick report back when we come back in the big group. And if somebody from your group can be ready to give one highlight of the group's conversation. I know it's going to be hard because there's going to be so many highlights, but we can try. And yeah. So any questions before we put you in these small group discussions?
Not a question, Janet, but a quick note.
Yeah.
I'm going to put everybody who said they were okay with either English or Spanish in one group with a monolingual Spanish speaker. Otherwise, everybody will go into English separately, okay?
Okay. All right, we'll see you in a little bit. Hope you enjoy these conversations. Thanks. Oh. Hi, Patricia, are you there? Okay, so there's like a bilingual group, Ruby? Is that what's going on?
Sorry, yeah, because so I put Sophia in it and everybody else with her is Spanish speakers.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
So we just have Patricia, who hasn't joined. Or maybe she stepped away.
Yeah. And I think because there's only what? 2 groups?
Three.
Three. We should catch up a little bit on time.
Okay.
Man, always a problem with me.
My name is Lady Hicks. I am.
You started playing it.
I accidentally did.
Oh, let me stop recording. I always forget that.
I know how it is. All right. Welcome back, everyone. If you can please make sure that that you are in your preferred language room. At the bottom of your Zoom window, there's a globe that says interpretation. Go ahead and either pick English or Spanish. Those are the 2 language rooms that we have. All right. Welcome back. Am I still sharing? Okay. Sometimes there's a green box around it, sometimes it doesn't. Right now the green box is gone. All right, so what group wants to go first and share their one highlight of your conversation? So you just unmute and sometimes. That I do know that after you come back from a breakout session, everybody's muted again. So you'll have to unmute and jump in.
I can go ahead and go. Somebody in the group that I was in brought up, really good examples of the ways of meeting parents, like in the spaces they're at. They were talking about, summer park programs, having like they go into the laundry mat, and I think that other examples that we talked about, whether they be, different activities, we go to community outreach, we go to the libraries. I think it all kind of went back to, going into those spaces where parents are at. I feel like that was a main commonality.
Thank you, Angelica.
I'll-
How about the other 2 groups?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll share too. One thing that I think Angelica was telling us about the family council and, getting the families there and, and all the ways that she got them there. And I said it was all based on relationships. And for the most part, you can put out an application for something and you might have a couple people apply. But if you have a relationship with them and you have that conversation to really explain what it is, which is exactly like what, our family resource people and Linda Rios family resource people, or I'm not sure what you're calling parent ambassadors or whatever, going out and building that relationship and hearing their story and then trying to, you're able to get the information you need and also really help them at a different level than it being just surface of handing them a piece of paper.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a great point. I also want to highlight too, a lot of times I think we focus on the relationship between the person who's interacting or engaging parents, but just as important is the relationship between the parents that are engaged, because we come and go. That's their community. They stay there, right? So thank you for elevating that. How about the other groups or anybody else that wants to share like an important highlight or a theme or pattern in your conversation?
I can go, Janet. So we kind of oh my God, I'm losing my words today. Bombarded Yesenia. All of us in our group, we were in the Spanish group, but we were all AOK ECC. And since Sophia and I are on the panel a little bit later on, a lot of the questions were very similar. So we kind of wanted to hear what they were doing at Enlace Chicago, which, you know, one of the things that I think is a common theme in the Latino community is like shifting those mindsets and those like old school traditions of like the family structure when you can, you know, as what if when the husband is home or not home, what the mom can or can't make decisions on. So like trying to shift those mindsets, a lot of similarities in the challenges that they're experiencing are things that we were experiencing here in Cicero as well.
Oh, I'm curious as to like what are some strategies that you all have? Did you get to talk about what are some ways that you're addressing that?
I think one of the things it was that trying to look for the ways to address that, right? I know at least here in Cicero, shifting mindsets is a huge deal, which is why we focus on making sure that our parent ambassadors are trained on the early childhood topics and parent impact. So kind of focusing on the why so that the parents want to be engaged, so that the moms are able to explain if they're in, you know, two-parent household to their husbands, why it's important to be involved, why it's important to do X, Y, Z. So we kind of here in Cicero start with the why.
Thank you. I think we've heard out of two groups, right? How about the third one?
I can share, and anyone else in my group, please feel free to jump in. I think really my takeaway is like just being reminded of the power of community, as well as just like reminding parents of like their innate sense of skill and empowering them and reminding them of that, because again, you know, these parents may come in, at least in my experience, feeling really out of sorts and not knowing what to do, and sometimes they just need that bit of a reminder that they have what it takes. And a little mantra I shared with my group that I learned from my colleague is the do with, do for, cheer on mentality. So you're really kind of building parents up from the start to the finish, with like maybe doing for them in the beginning, then doing with them as you build that rapport, and then cheering them on so that they feel empowered and have the resources to go forward. That's my highlight. And if anyone else wants to jump in, please do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Anyone else wanna jump in?
this is Becky. I was in the group with Samantha. I was really hoping she would put in that mantra, because I really like that a lot, and definitely am going to take that back to my group and hopefully pass it on to more birth to 5. That mentality, doing it for them at first, doing it with them, and then cheering them on. That's, I think, our inevitable goal is to cheer them on, and so that they can do it on themselves. So thank you, Samantha.
I love that mantra too. It's I think it's so simple and it shows a progression, right, of building that capacity, that leadership. I know when I first started working with parents, I wanted to jump to the like they do it themselves, but I realized also like part of that is just like modeling, right? Modeling is so important, and saying like I am modeling what we're doing, and then we're getting to the point where like you can do it on your own. And really, if we think about it, that's how people interact with me at work too. Like when I get on board into a new job. Well, thank you all very much. Now I'm so excited to get to the panel. I know you are too. All right, okay. So without further ado, I want to introduce our panelists well, I'll give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. Entonces I want to translate myself. It's so crazy. So you can go ahead and get and introduce yourself, Sophia. So, Sofía, te pueden presentar, pero está on mute. So you could go ahead and but you're on mute, so please make sure you hello, Sophia?
¿Sí me escucho?
Okay, yeah. I just wanted one point is that if you don't want to hear both languages, you can mute the original audio and just hear the interpretation. And you could do that by clicking on the interpretation logo, and there's like the English and Spanish option, and then the third is mute original audio, and you can do that. Okay. Go ahead, Sophia, introduce yourself. Thank you.
Sí, buenos días. ¿Sí me escucho? Ok. Sí, buenos días. Mi nombre es Sofía Gutiérrez. Soy madre embajadora del programa de educación temprana colaborativa en Cícero y nuestros niños de AOK. Soy madre de 2 hijos, uno de 19 y otra niña de 17. Estoy en la comunidad de Cícero aportando mi voluntariado hace como unos 10, 12 años, pero enfocada en lo que es nuestros niños. Somos de 6 años en adelante, tenemos, pues estamos en la lucha de involucrar a padres y traer a más padres a que estén con nosotros. Ahorita nuestro grupo cuenta de 10 embajadoras. Somos 10 embajadoras en la comunidad, repartiendo lo que es la información en educación temprana, informando a familias, ayudándoles a que sigan con el proceso de sus hijos, de que los involucren desde chiquitos, dándoles toda esa información, teniéndoles muchas ideas, ayudándolos. Hacemos un café para padres donde los involucramos y es lo que aportamos a la comunidad.
Thank you, Sophia. And then I'll pass it over to Linda. Introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Linda Rios. I am the All Our Kids Network Coordinator for Cicero, Illinois. So my job here in Cicero is to lead and facilitate the early childhood collaboration. The AOK networks have 12 different early childhood collaborations across the state. We are collaborations that focus on a systems change framework with a human-centered design in order to create equitable change. So what does that mean, right? We make sure that the issues and the goals that we're creating are at a system level, making sure that we have the parents and the people at the table experiencing the problems a part of those discussions to create the solutions in order to create better family and child outcomes here in Cicero, with a focus on ensuring that our children are entering kindergarten ready. And a little bit of background of myself. I have a 14-year-old son that just started freshman this year. I have over 13 years experience in the early childhood field, and I was also born and raised in the community that I'm currently working in.
Nice, thank you. And okay, so I'm gonna stop the PowerPoint, and I'm going to be sharing a video of our third panelist. So part of, we did not plan this, but part of, I think, engaging with parents who are oftentimes like Linda said, dealing with these systemic problems and living in communities that are under-resourced, underserved, is that things happen. And so Miss Letty, we had already practiced. She was ready to come on. Something came up and she wasn't able to join us today. And so, we pivoted and we were like, okay, contingency plan. We didn't have one, to be honest, but then we came up with one. And we said, how about if we still bring you and your expertise via a video? And we just got creative and made it work. And sometimes we just, I think flexibility is an important point. I think of just all the work, but especially if we're working with community for sure. So I'm going to be showing you parts of the video as they align with the questions that the panelists, Linda and Sophia, are answering. So here is her introduction.
My name is Lady Hicks. I am from East St. Louis. I am a mother of 3, and I'm with the Greater East St. Louis Early Learning Partnership. And I'm also with an organization that's called COFI, which stands for Community.
What's going on? See, technology. Okay. See, things don't always happen like we planned. But what we can do is go ahead with the panel with Linda and Sophia, and we can also what we can do is email the video of Letty so y'all can watch on your own. Thank you for your flexibility and apologies for that. Okay. So I'll go back to sharing the questions for us visual people. Okay. Let's get with we have 4 questions for the panelists, and then you all will be able to ask whatever questions you have for them. I know that's important. Okay, so let's start with, can you tell us how your collaboration / organization engages parents and why? So we'll start with you, Sophia.
Sí, buenos días. ¿Qué beneficios he visto? Es la pregunta.
Oh, no, can you tell us how your collaboration engages parents and why? Question number 1.
Ok. El propósito de nuestra colaborativa es informar a los padres en lo que es la educación temprana. Estamos siempre ahí para darles información y estamos siempre juntos en una comunicación de ir a dejarles saber la información de lo que es la educación temprana. Y estamos con ese propósito siempre. Los beneficios que nosotros hemos visto es que las cifras de los niños estaban muy bajas y entonces han aumentado con todo eso que se ha estado haciendo en la comunidad. Hemos estado empapando a los papás de información y todo eso, y ese es nuestro propósito en la colaborativa, seguir siempre al par los papás con la colaborativa y estar siempre presentes ahí, dando información y todo, ayudándolos.
Thank you, Sophia. Same question for you, Linda. And I know you're from the same collaborative, but it's from a different perspective, I think.
Yes, so here in Cicero, how do we engage our parents, right? So we recognize the importance of having parents, community members at the table when talking about the needs in the community and how to create solutions, because they're the ones that are our target audience. So here in Cicero, we have a kind of merged funding of 2 collaborations. And one of the things that we have in Cicero that's kind of unique is we have parent ambassadors. And specifically for the early childhood focus, we have 10. So there are 10 stipend pay ambassadors that the focus, like Sophia said, is for them to be a beacon of information in the community on why early childhood is important, what early childhood development is, and why connecting to resources or programming is important as well. So how do we engage our parent ambassadors to want to become a parent ambassador is basically word of mouth. They see what other parents are doing and they get intrigued because they're coming to some of the things at the collaborative network. And they're like, I want to do what that parent is doing, or I want to do what that community member is doing. That's kind of how we engage, right? So we utilize the parents and community members to be kind of the front and the face of the collaboration in order for us to build a trusting relationship with everyone else in the community and get parents engaged in that format.
Thank you. So question number 2. We're starting with you, Sophia. Can you describe your work with your collaboration / organization and how they have prepared and supported you to do that work? So what do you do with the collaboration and how have they prepared you and supported you?
Ok. Mi trabajo es estar al pendiente de estar en las juntas, involucrando a los padres, sabiendo la información cada día en lo que Linda Ríos ella nos asesora, es nuestra líder, siempre está presente ella en estarnos diciendo y asesorándonos qué es lo que vamos a seguir haciendo día con día. Y podemos ver el apoyo también en lo mismo de los papás, ya cuando nos ven a nosotros haciendo eso en la comunidad, como que también los papás se empapan con la información que les damos y ahí estamos con los papás una y una. Y mi trabajo el trabajo que ha hecho la colaborativa conmigo es prepararnos mucho con talleres, cómo salir a la comunidad, cómo hablar con los papás. Hemos recibido talleres de coffee, cómo ir a tocar puertas, cómo romper ese hielo con los papás, cómo dejarles saber lo que realmente nosotros, nuestra visión es los niños que alcancen esas metas de educación temprana.
Thank you, Sophia. How many hours a week or a month do you usually spend on this position?
Perdón, nuestro rol de padres embajadores es a 3 meses. Cada 3 meses recibimos $500, o sea que al año son $2,000 que la colaborativa recauda fondos para darnos ese incentivo a nosotros. Y pues yo creo más que nada la pasión de nosotros que estamos interesados en ver el cambio en Cicero, lo hacemos con el corazón en mano porque estamos en diferentes roles haciendo en la comunidad. Yo hago en otro lugar voluntariado y no recibo ese afecto que estoy recibiendo aquí en esta colaborativa. Entonces, a esta colaborativa como que me florece más a mí misma para seguir conmigo, con mi involucramiento con los papás, me pongo más prendida para irme a seguir la lucha.
Gracias, Sofía. ¿Puede hablar un poquito de las otras posiciones que tiene en la comunidad que hace de voluntaria?
Un poquito de la actividad voluntaria. Un poquito más de lo que hacemos. Nosotros nos preparamos para ir a dejar la información, vamos a lavanderías, vamos a supermercados, estamos hablando con los papás para esas evaluaciones que se hacen para los niños. Tenemos esas pláticas comunitarias, el café y conchas que hacemos a cada mes. Eso nos da también mucha seguridad de hablar con los papás. Pues hacemos miles de roles en la colaborativa para atraer a los papás a la comunidad que estén presentes.
Thank you, Sophia. And I had the privilege of talking to Sophia a little bit more, and I know that you also were able to start a parent patrol at a school in your community.
Es que
no
sé cuánto me debo de extender a platicar, pero pues sí, tengo 12 años patrullando en las escuelas públicas, afuera, viendo a los niños, soy los ojos y la voz de los niños, que lleguen bien a la escuela, que estén bien, pero eso ya es fuera de, de esto, pero está bien, pues lo hago, ¿verdad? Es otro de mis roles que yo hago. También estoy en otra organización donde ayudo a madres que están con abuso doméstico, pero mi enfoque es lo de educación temprana y ahí estoy.
Thank you, Sophia. So I think it's it's important to also see how like building parent leadership or like supporting parents to recognize their leadership because that leadership is already there. Also, I think like Sophia was saying, flowers into leaders who are able to then participate in other aspects of their community. And that is so awesome. So thank you, Sophia. The same question for you, Linda. Can you describe your work with your collaboration organization and how have they prepared and supported you to do that work?
Yeah, so before I get into that question, I know that you asked Sophia how many hours. She talked a little bit about the stipend pay, which is $2,000 a year. So every 3 months at minimum, the parent ambassadors, they do at minimum 50 hours every 3 months, but they generally surpass that. That's just a minimum requirement for them to get that full stipend. Sophia is very actively involved in different areas in the community with different organizations and volunteer work. So we are very blessed that a lot of our parent ambassadors are very active in the community. As far as how can I describe my work within the collaboration?
Can I ask a follow-up question on the hours, Linda?
Yes.
So is it like the ambassadors get hours for do they get hours for like doing outreach, for attending meetings? Like what all goes into those 50 hours?
To those 50 hours, what goes into would be them being a part of meetings, not just in early childhood. Sometimes it's at the bigger collaboration level, which is the CCC, being at those meetings as well, being at supervision meetings, being at trainings, being out in the community. It really does depend. Their cafes also count as hours. They're planning, they're coordinating for events or helping to coordinate events. So anything that has to do with the collaborative work that we're doing in Cicero generally counts for them as hours. So on our level, we create a schedule to make sure that they are getting those hours needed to get paid. And they also have an overall supervisor that kind of tracks their hours. And if they're under hours, we'll offer them hours to make sure that they're getting to that 50 mark.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Can you describe your work in the collaboration and organization and how they have prepared and supported your work? Well, for my position, especially, I have collective impact training, parent engagement training, facilitation training, systems change framework training, all of those things at the state level. So I have 8 years, 7 years of training under my belt, but specifically to work with parents, I think that's more a relational trust building thing that you gain through experience and making connections and the importance of that. I also have 13 plus years of background in early childhood and early childhood development. So what I prepare myself to do this work is I want to make sure that when we're sending our parents out into the community, they can organically speak on what those things are. So I've taken it upon myself to create training tracks for them and train them before they go out into the field. And that's just, additional to the state funded stuff. This is basically, I get a lot of support also from the state team. There's a lot of support and learning from different entities throughout the state and being able to be in the same spaces with other collaboration leaders to see what works and what doesn't work. Heavily involved in Illinois Action for Children and now in the Birth to 5 councils as well, to make sure every community is not cookie cutter, and how you work with parents are not cookie cutter. So sometimes seeing different examples in different communities, it may work bringing that type of work into your own.
Thank you. And I just want to say, if you all we're going to be taking questions from you all, but if you have questions, I think it's a small enough group that you can also just put it in the chat or jump in. We're having a talk here, like a round table. So yes, please. And can you describe, like, where does the funding for this work come from, and how many supports in terms of like staff? I know you mentioned a couple of different staff. Like, does it take to run a program like this?
So there's 2 funding sources. The Cicero Community Collaborative is a neighborhood network of United Way. So that collaboration pays for the stipend pay for the parent ambassador funding and also provides some funding for the work, committee collaboration work with early childhood focus. And then at the AOK level, I'm a support system. We newly added Michelle Ramirez is also on this call as a support system, where we provide the training, we also help with the supervision because we provide the work and co-create the work with the parent ambassadors and document all of that work on our end. And then in the CCC team, the CCC has a director and has a parent ambassador supervisor. So we're like a team of 4 kind of moving the work along. So it's one of the things that we've learned when connecting with parents, it's more than, and having them work, it's more than, this is what we need you to do, go do it. It has to be very intentional, has to be very detail oriented. There has to be structures, and there has to be development opportunities for growth and leadership opportunities for growth. So I think on our end, we have a good team of 4 that we go above and beyond to make sure that they are ready to go into the community with the supports that they need.
Thank you, Linda. There's a question in the chat around, so Patricia, there's a parent ambassador funding, was that answered already for you? Is there any particular question you have around it?
Yes, it was answered. You just answered it. But I wanted to know, the next question that I had is there like a template or a booklet that lays out that particular parent ambassador program, or any resources that you would recommend in terms of organizing and putting something like that together?
I don't think there is a specific book. There is a lot of different communities that utilize either a parent ambassador model. It may not be called parent ambassador. And it's kind of tailored to your community. What may work here in Cicero may not work in another community. It's a lot of trial and error, but it's not, we don't have a specific document
Do you
laying
have,
it
you
out.
guys have like a guideline that you use or that you give to the parents when you're like a training guideline, like, okay, we're going to have 3 weeks of training, or, you know, a month of training in terms of to get the parents ready, you know, what do you use? Or do you
Yes.
alter it every time?
No, so every the parent ambassadors in early childhood, we have 10, and they're also different parent ambassadors in different focus areas throughout Cicero. But they all, when they're onboarding, there is a contract agreement that of what they're signing up to do, what their expectations are, what are their and then we have an orientation training on the history of the work that we're doing, why we're doing this work, and what their role is in the community, what our role is for them, so that they know what our expectations are. And, you know, it's important that they have expectations of us as well as far as supports. So we do onboard them in that manner. And then depending on the work that we're doing, we provide them with those trainings needed in order for them to implement that work. But there is an overall guide of kind of like an agreement before coming on. Like, for example, our parents here need to fill out a 1099, I believe, in order to receive the stipend pay. They have to commit to at minimum 1 year before they could move to a different focus area, and things of that nature structurally within the collaboration that are embedded in that description. If you want, I need to talk with the CCC team first to see if I can send out a copy of what that looks like.
Yes,
And I will
okay.
connect with Janet once I get that answer.
Yes. Now, the other thing I'd like to say is I'm very, 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 as you can tell, interested in that. The only difference is, as I said in my small group, I deal with immigration quite a bit. So my population is primarily Latino and Haitian. So I'm always jumping between cultures, and I have the early people that are just coming into America. So I'm dealing with all those cultural guidelines and heavily wanting to be involved. And it works out okay, but that's, you know, some sort of a guideline also with a stipend would just advance it, like say 90%. I mean, I already have them. On the personal order, the interaction and things like that. But something like this would be like 90.
Yeah, we'll make sure I will connect with them after this meeting, and then I'll shoot Janet an email.
And Patricia, where are you at right now?
I'm in New Jersey, but I'm in what's called the Southern Jersey, down by Atlantic City. I'm in a location called Pleasantville, but it's right next to Atlantic City. So we're dealing with seasonal type of populations. And so therefore, this is the area where they really struggle because it's seasonal. And, you know, you can't just cut grass and do boardwalk and beach stuff now. So.
Thank you. Also, Patricia, I put a link to our resources around parent engagement that outlines a few different roles, one of them being parent ambassador, but like Linda said, it's like a starting point, because, you know, needs are different, communities are different. Like some guidance around starting a parent ambassador program. And definitely encourage you to, you know, take a look at what, you know, if Linda is able to send it out, what they're doing, and then pick and choose what fits for your community. So.
Yeah, the other thing I was wondering, what are you connected with the United Way, but I'm sure that that's a part of the collaboration in terms of the stipend, because that would make a major difference. And if the stipend is coming out of United Way, that's a whole nother type thing that I need to connect with.
Yeah, the stipend's coming out of United Way because this was a neighborhood network of the United Way. And every network is different and they receive funding for collective impact work. And we've kind of embedded that parent ambassador piece into the collaboration as a whole.
Nice. There's one question, a little bit on like the mechanics or around the ambassador program. How do your ambassadors make referrals, and do you have a form they use? Do you have a form you use to report data and outcomes?
Yeah, so our parent ambassadors, they are connectors in connecting families to resources, but they don't send the referral out directly. What they do is we have created a form for them to take down basic family information, the type of services that they may need, and then they would turn that into myself or to Michelle, that's our family engagement specialist. And we utilize a web-based application system called Iris. And if our partners are in the system as well, then we utilize that system to send the referral. And then within that system, we are able to get data on if the family is connected to the services or not.
Linda, I have a question on that. We use Iris in Elgin area also. But when your specialists are out in the community, you may have said this and I missed it. Do they have something that they use to make those referrals for the other person? Like in our community, the referrals would come to me and then I would put them in the Iris system. How do you, what's that step before
So the
that?
step before is they do have a paper copy of gathering the parent information or the person's information with what type of service that they're having. But because we do recognize that it is a lot of information to know the ins and out of the different programming aside of the work that the parents are doing, what I have them do is I have them let that family know that I will be connecting with them or someone else will be connecting with them for more details. And then we connect with that family. And while I'm on the phone with that family, then I'll utilize the Iris system to send that referral. So they're connecting them to me for more information.
Linda, if you're able to share what form we're coming up with one right now.
Yeah.
If you're able to share that, I would love that also.
Yeah, I could share those because those I created.
Oh, thank
So
you,
we're
Linda.
good.
Thank you. All right, I think let's go. We have two more questions and then we'll just jump into all the other ones too. All right, next, for you, Sophia, what have been the benefits of your collaborations parent engagement work?
Es la tercera pregunta, ¿verdad?
Yes, please.
Estoy completamente segura que los tres hemos tenido beneficios, la colaborativa, los padres y la comunidad, porque hemos visto realmente un grande cambio que se ha hecho en este tiempo que estamos con la colaborativa. Están los padres más involucrados.
¿Me puedo pasar, Sofía? I'm not hearing the interpretation. Is anybody else?
No, it says mine's off.
Okay. Letty or Lindsay, I think we're having issues with our interpretation.
No está.
So Janet, you have to make sure, are you in the English room? Is
Yeah.
everyone else in the English room that can't hear the interpretation?
Yeah. Letty or Lindsay, do you know what's going on with the interpretation? It says interpretation off. Yes.
Do you have two options underneath the interpretation off?
English and Spanish, mute
Choose
original.
choose English, and then
I
you
am
should be
in
able.
English.
Is it checked off the English or is it checked off original audio interpretation off?
It's
Where's
English.
your check mark is in front of English?
Yeah. Mhm.
I think I'm able to.
Lindsay or Letty, how do we fix this?
You won't be able to hear them unless you take them off as interpreter, if they're still
Okay.
in that room.
I think Lindsay can speak into the English one, right?
I could, when I move into the English room, Janet, I could hear Lindsay fine. You just have to make sure that it says in your bottom screen where it says show captions next to it, it has to say English.
Okay. What happened to it? Maybe Lindsay, you were muted. Let's start again. Sorry, because we couldn't hear it. Okay. Otra vez, Sofía. Perdón.
Seguimos con la pregunta número 3.
Sí, por favor.
Ah, ok. Le digo que
Perdón.
estoy completamente segura de que esto ha funcionado muy bien en las 3 cualidades, ya sea en la comunidad, con los padres y conmigo misma. He visto los resultados. Yo me he empapado de información para transmitirla a las demás personas y para mí ha sido beneficio en mi familia porque he estado involucrándome en lo que es para el estudio de mis hijos en las becas. Antes atrás yo no sabía que había buenos recursos de becas y eso, y ya ha servido mucho. Toda esta información nos lleva a todo junto de algo bueno que estamos haciendo para la comunidad y para los jóvenes. Yo he visto los beneficios grandes, grandes desde que estoy en la colaborativa. Y me imagino que también la colaborativa está viendo día con día cómo nos relacionamos a estar bien unos con otros y que estamos en la colaboración de estar bien.
Gracias,
¿Se
Sofía.
escuchó?
Sí. Gracias. Same question to you, Linda.
So what have been the benefits of our collaborations, parent engagement work? I think Sophie kind of hit that on the nail, right? So it's mutually benefiting us at the collaboration level, our parent ambassadors that are doing the work in the community, right? We're all interconnected. At the collaboration level, we benefit from having the parent voice at the table, making sure that they're keeping us accountable, making sure that the work we're created is focused on the parent need and that it is removing barriers for parents in regards to access, right? So they keep us accountable down to the language that we're utilizing in the marketing materials that we're using, right? To make sure that our reach is greater. For the parent ambassador piece, they are our eyes and ears in the community, also letting us know what is bubbling up, what challenges are happening, what solutions are working or not working. And for the community as a whole is them receiving this information on, the meaning of early childhood development, early childhood education, why parents and community are very important to early childhood development and all the resources available for those parents to connect.
Thank you. And then the last question at our end is, what challenges has your collaboration faced when it comes to parent engagement, and how have you managed these challenges? So, question number 4 for you, Sophia.
Ok, yo creo que siempre para iniciar no ha sido fácil, siempre hemos tenido retos de que muchas veces nos dicen, aquí no puedes dar información, pero buscamos la forma de cómo volver a proseguir a seguir con esa información y muchas veces se ha tenido que pedir permiso en lugares para poder estar estables dando esa información. Y así hemos ido venciendo barreras de que pues hay normas y leyes que se deben de respetar y a veces pues primero es pedir permiso. Siempre hay que respetar de que si aquí no podemos, tenemos que saber por qué o qué es lo qué requisito piden y ya seguimos con esas barreras. Pero nunca es difícil, siempre se puede.
Thank you, Sophia. Can you give an example of a place where they told you that you couldn't talk to families and how maybe you were able to talk to them after or what you did?
Muchas veces fuimos con nuestros folletos a distribuirlos a los parques y nos decían no pueden dar esa información, aunque siempre nosotros decíamos es información para educación temprana, es algo bueno para la comunidad, era algo que ellos tenían que ser aprobado para que se pudiera dar esa información y ya hoy en día ya se ha trabajado en eso y ya no se batalla tanto para dar informaciones. Inclusive también para lo que es el distrito, no muy aceptable ellos que nosotros nos acerquemos a dar información. Siempre tiene que estárseles pidiendo como un permiso o algo así para estar aceptados. Aquí estamos dando realmente una información y yo lo veo así, ¿por qué tiene que ser esto si es una educación para un beneficio para la comunidad muy bueno? Pero es lo que le digo, que hay normas y reglas que se tienen que respetar. Pero hemos salido adelante, vamos adelante.
Thank you, Sophia. Anything else that you want to add? Did I interrupt you?
Pues que nunca es difícil de que nos digan no puedes y nosotros podemos buscar la alternativa de cómo seguir adelante y cómo estar siempre firmes a lo que vamos a ir a hacer, que estemos siempre con la unión del grupo, siempre la comunicación es lo que yo veo que cuenta mucho con nosotros, estar comunicadas.
Thank you, Sophia. That same question to you, Linda. What challenges has your collaboration organization faced when it comes to parent engagement, and how have you managed these challenges?
I think for the community piece, what Sophie said, the being able to get information out in different spaces, right? We had some challenges in the beginning of where we could hand out information, we can't, and then just fortifying those partnerships with those organizations, the district, the town, throughout the years has helped us overcome those challenges and for our ambassadors to be out and about. When it comes to like the recruitment and engagement of parent ambassadors, one of the challenges that we faced early on that we kind of learned from before we adapted the parent ambassador model into the Cicero community as a whole was we learned from our Cicero was also a recipient of innovation zones. They had parent ambassadors that would recruit families to the pop-up preschools. And when that program started here in Cicero, those parent ambassadors, they would go out very professional to do the recruitment and the door-to-door, and families were just not receptive. Absolutely not. So we learned from that experience that, you know, we need to be approachable. The community needs to see you as you're a part of that community. So although they do represent AOK and the CCC with like t-shirts and outerwear, we're to the point in the community where now they're recognized and they're not really seen as like a threat of some sort. Challenges to recruit them early on. You know, the incentive of a stipend pay got them some to the table, some the stipend pay doesn't really matter. They love doing this work. Like Sophia, she is in multiple groups. That's a lot of time to be in 3 groups, especially with the amount of hours required here in early childhood. But they are very passionate about their community, right? But one of the things that we did have that was important was to create a structure, because we have the parent ambassador model throughout the whole CCC collaboration. And some of the other committees don't have the supports because they don't have merged funding, to kind of make sure that the creation of work in those focus areas are happening. So it's making sure that we have a structure that all of them are considered as part of one group that they follow. So like a structure for getting paid, for the stipend. So we created this structure that we learned from our experience early on when we were trying to launch, that some committees were advanced in their parent ambassador piece and some were not. So we had some parent ambassadors making 70 hours while some parent ambassadors only had 10, but they were all getting paid the same. So we had to create a structure because that caused conflict within the groups of, at minimum, in order to get half of your stipend, you have to meet the 25-hour mark. If you make 24.5, you're still not going to get your paycheck, because we have somebody in place to make sure to get you to that 25. So if you're not taking advantage of those hours, it's kind of not on our end. To get the full stipend pay, you have to make 50 hours or more. So creating structures like that, to alleviate conflict within parent ambassadors within the collaboration as a whole was really important. Being clear and concise on the type of work that is expected from them, but making sure that they're getting the trainings and the supports needed to implement that work. You know, so those are like the types of challenges that we experienced. We experienced challenges like anywhere other else. Sometimes there's conflict within our group within itself, different personalities. So we are very transparent with open communication, making sure that we don't let things spill over and become bigger than they are when we're working with parents. So we work with them closely. We meet at minimum. We generally strive for 4 times a month that it's just parent ambassador meetings and creating and talking about what we're working, depending on how busy our month is. It may be twice a month, but we meet very regularly to make sure that they have what they need and that we're providing them with those materials, and that we're also learning the challenges that they're coming across so that we could co-create solutions. So it's just being very transparent and making sure that they're in a trusting environment where they can voice, hey, you know what, we don't feel that this is what's happening in the community, or that goal that we created, those action steps are not going to work, XYZ. So it's just a lot of trust building and relationship building.
Thank you. So those are the questions that we have on our end. I'm gonna stop sharing. I think I did. Okay. So any questions that you all have? I was gonna use like this fancy app to get questions, but we could just use the chat or unmute. This is such a small group. There's a question in the chat. What brings families back to your organization and keeps them engaged? What is the buy-in?
The buy-in for the parent ambassadors, I think it's just recognition, providing them with the supports needed to do the work. They are the face of the work that they're doing, so they're able to engage with other parents. That's how other parents become more involved. But I could let Sophia answer that. What keeps her engaged? Because she's one of our oldest ambassadors. She's been with us for 7 years. So we have 2 ambassadors that have stayed with us for 7 years, and Sophia is one of them.
So Sophia, what keeps you engaged? What keeps you doing this work?
A mí día a día lo que me mantiene más apasionada a estar en lo de educación temprana, es mirar que puedo ayudar a una familia cuando esa familia está, por decir así, que no encuentra como una solución para su niño, porque muchas veces nos ha tocado ir a hablar con personas que sus niños están imperativos o tienen alguna discapacidad y ellos aún no sabían que había los recursos. Entonces, cuando nosotros les damos esa facilidad de que hay algo en la comunidad para que ellos lo puedan adquirir como por muy alto precio que no sabían que era completamente gratis, pues yo me lleno de energía y otra vez vuelvo a decir, ok, yo puedo seguir ayudando y pues ahí estamos ayudando con lo poquito que puedo. Esa es mi ¿cómo se dice? Mi inspiración de seguir en educación temprana y luego yo soy muy lenta de aprendizaje, no soy muy buena. No soy muy, yo creo que me quedé ahí porque mi papá siempre me dijo, usted no sirve para estudiar y maybe se me quedó mucho eso y pues no soy muy buena para estudiar. Y yo digo, si los niños pueden florecer, pues yo les ayudo.
Thanks, Sophia. And the little time that I know, I think you are an amazing individual and you've learned so much. And yeah, just
Ay,
wanted
no.
to-
Bien. Sofía, usted ha crecido muchísimo y sabe mucha información. So no diga que le falta esas cosas,
Pues
porque yo creo que
no se me ha pegado el inglés. No se me ha pegado el inglés.
pero
Pero bueno,
el inglés punto y aparte, ¿verdad? El trabajo es lo importante y usted hace muy buen trabajo.
gracias. Con lo poco que yo pueda ayudar, yo estoy disponible. Gracias, muy amables.
There's another question in the chat about like how diverse is your parents in collaboration in terms of education levels, in culture, and income,
Well,
languages, ages, single or married.
So we generally don't talk about education level. We focus on community and if you're a part of the community and if you know this area. As far as culture, Cicero is over 90% Latino, Hispanic. All of our parent ambassadors are Latino, majority Spanish speaking, but we have some that are bilingual. And it's basically, these positions are open to anyone as long as there is a Cicero resident, because it's important to have the people in the community spearheading the work. So we have a mixture of ambassadors that are single, that are married, that have children in early childhood, that their children, they started doing this work when their children were in early childhood and 7 years later, they're still here, so it's a combination. There isn't really a target area that we focus on, because as a whole, for children in the community as a thrive, every person is important. So as long as you're passionate and want to make sure that the needs of families and children are being met and you live in this community, then you're welcome to onboard if we have a spot available for you, right? Because we also have limited funding for stipends for the amount of parents that we have.
Any other questions that you all have or comments? I have a question. I think that there's a question in the chat. What are the 5 top community issues?
In regards to early childhood, we assess the community every 5 years to find out what are the needs in the community in relevance to early childhood. So in this last cycle, what popped up was there were a lot of cultural barriers and access to programs, right? So cultural barriers on families not knowing what early childhood education means and why it's important, families not knowing the resources that are in the community, and families finding that early childhood education is important because generally education in our community starts when you enter the school district, right? So the importance of those first 5 years. Another issue is access to developmental screenings. So all of those children that are in programs are being screened, birth to 5, birth to 3, but the children that are not enrolled in a program as a whole are not being screened. So we provide free developmental screenings for children not enrolled in a program for birth to 3, where we connect them directly to early intervention. The third problem is our kindergarten readiness. Cicero currently, at the last kids data, only 15% of the population was kindergarten ready. There were barriers in regards to accessing programs, but not because the resources weren't there, but because all of the hoops you have to jump through to even get enrolled into a program. So there's different issues at every level that we've come across.
Thanks. There's a message for you, Sophia, in the chat, but and then another question. Any immigration or DACA concern?
So we, prior to COVID, we lost a lot of our ambassadors, a good chunk, when they were doing immigration raids here in Cicero. So, and we lost a lot of families as well, dropping out of programs, right? Because information and whatnot. But we shifted to the stipend pays before didn't need the 1099, and then needing the 1099 was a huge shift to keep people on because of those immigration statuses and having to report that income. But agency-wide, there was no way around because we needed that for our like accounting and our records where that funding was going. So there was some issues in regards to that. But there are some ambassadors that even when we switched over to the 1099, they still wanted to do the work even if they don't get the pay or the full pay. So it's more about doing the work and them making sure that we're providing them with safe space. We also have in Cicero, the Cicero Community Collaboration has a welcoming committee that focuses on immigration and DACA. So making sure that we have resources available when needed or connecting them to the organizations that provide those resources is important.
Linda, I have a question. Some of in Elgin, we have some people that are wanting to work as specialists that don't have their social security card. But in January, they can fill out an I-10. Isn't that right? So they can work and we can pay them.
I
Do you know?
believe I'm not quite sure. I do have the director of the CCC here on the call. I don't know if she's worked with since they get paid through that program. She could probably answer that question.
Hi, Elida Ortiz, Director of CCC Program. First of all, this is a great panel of great information. In regards to the ITIN, we do know that once they do have an ITIN number, if they do not have a Social Security, we can go ahead and use the ITIN for the W-9. So that's an acceptable form of information in order to to get payment.
Is there a limit on how much money we can make on the ITIN?
There is not that I know of that there's a limit. There is a limit, however, if for the W-9 in order to report into taxes, and I believe that's $599 for a calendar year. So if they make less than $600, they don't have to report it out to the IRS. But then if it's more than the $600, it's
Oh, thank you.
And that's
I
also
think
in combination, and it's not just from one source. So if you get 200 from one source, 200 from another, and if it adds up to more than $600 in a year, then it's a must to comply.
Thank you, Arriba. And then thank you, Michelle. Put some more information in the chat about someone can always apply for an ITIN year round. If they wait to file during tax season, it will just take much longer to receive in the mail. Oh, and then another comment. Do you offer parent ESL classes or staff Spanish classes?
No, our focus in the work that we do is based on the assessments we do in the community. So it's collective impact focused. We do have some partnerships with organizations that offer those pieces, but at the collaborative level, we don't. Generally, all of our meetings, we have interpretation for our parents, and our meetings that I conduct with them are all held in Spanish.
So we do have 6 minutes left. If there's no more questions, I do want to just give the opportunity to Sophia and Linda to just share anything that they want to leave with us that we haven't asked. And whoever wants to go first. So anything that you want to share with us or with anyone who's looking to do this kind of work in their community. Do you want to go first, Sophia? Do you want to share anything that we haven't asked you?
Ok, voy a compartir un poquito sobre más de mi pasión del involucramiento para los niños de educación temprana. A mi hijo era bien imperativo y el doctor le tenía que dar medicina y yo dije, ¿cómo este niño va a estar siempre con medicina? Mejor busco otras alternativas. Entonces él ya con 3 años de edad lo llevé a la escuelita, que antes decíamos la escuelita, al Children's Center, y entonces ahí le quitaron la medicina por completo y hoy puedo dar gracias a Dios que mi hijo no ocupa medicina y es completamente él independiente de que tuviera que haber estado a base de esa medicina para que él estuviera tranquilo. Como que el estudio lo ha hecho a él completamente relajarse, porque ha estudiado muy bonito desde los 3 años. Entonces eso como que a mí me impulsó a hacer más por los niños, por ver el avance que mi hijo tuvo, ¿verdad? Entonces yo digo, sí, de verdad necesitamos mucho la información porque los papás nunca tenemos el manual completo para saber cómo instruir a nuestros hijos. Entonces, así se ha ido dando mi historia de que en realidad yo no tengo alto estudio nomás de 6 años de primaria, porque de donde yo vengo nomás están 6 años de primaria. Entonces, pues aquí yo creo me enfoqué mucho a trabajar y todo eso y nunca pensé en el estudio hasta ahora que ya estoy grande, pero ahí andamos. Esperemos que este año que entra, me enfoque un poquito más en el inglés para avanzar un poquito más.
Thank you, Sophia. Linda, anything else you want to leave with us?
I think for me, just to state, there is no wrong or right way to do this work when you're working with parents. It's just really important that I would say that when you're engaging parents, that you're knowing your why and what they're going to do before you approach them, and asking for feedback while you're creating what they're going to do is also important. We need to be able to bend to the parents that we're trying to engage to do this work, and kind of leave that mentality of, even depending on your structure, if, like, for example, in Cicero, there's stipend pay. A stipend pay does not mean an employee. It's their volunteering, and we're compensating them for their time. So sometimes we have to bend and do things for them to be able to do their work, right? So making sure that we're having open communication on something as easy as calendar and availability, and, childcare, because these are also parents as well. And making sure that we're providing them with the spaces and the tools needed to thrive, and then everything else will fall into place.
Well, thank you so very much for your sharing your expertise, Sophia and Linda. We really appreciate the work that you do. And I just invite everybody to fill the evaluation. Thank you for also for your flexibility. There's a few hiccups, but it's part of the world and the work that we do sometimes. Thank you for your flexibility. You could please fill out your evaluation, and then at this point, if anybody wants to share anything that you're still grappling with, or one takeaway from today's training. And for Sophia and Linda, there's so much love for you in the chat. Please read it. Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. And there's nothing here, then we're at time, and thank you again for joining us. Oh, there's also going to be additional trainings that we offer. So in January, we have an introduction to systemic racism, and then throughout the winter into the spring, we're going to be offering trainings on how to engage parents in each of the roles that we talked about. Feel free to register.
Janet, I had a
we also-
question.
Mhm.
Are any of those trainings, will you have interpretation in Spanish? Or are they all English? It's just because we're looking for trainings for our ambassadors, and it's sometimes really hard to find things in Spanish.
Yeah, at the moment they're in English, but if there's need, we can offer it in Spanish as well. And then we could also maybe talk about some, like, creating some parent specific training.
Okay.
Like these, because these are more geared to people who are engaging parents. Mhm. We also have a collaboration data sharing training, and yep, and all the other trainings on how to engage in the roles that we offer as part of our framework. They're on our website. You can register now, partnerplanact.org. And they're also in the handouts. They have links, so you can just. Thank you so much for everybody for coming today, sharing your knowledge of what you're doing, and we hope to see you again. Thank you very much, Sophia and Linda, and everybody in Cicero doing an amazing job.
Thank you.
Is the evaluation